who inspired a lot of people around her, and we will unfold her story as a part of our ongoing series of LEH dialogues, Dare to Dream, Game Changer series. And I also want to call out that today is a special day. It's a Thanksgiving Day here in the US, and people are celebrating that. And those of you who are celebrating Thanksgiving, a happy Thanksgiving to you. I want to really start with a little bit of background or introduction of what is LEH and what we do, and then I will move on to having our conversation with Linda. And I'll promise to keep it really short because I don't want to take a lot of space between Linda and us. So I am part of the team which runs Leadership at Humanity. We are basically in the business of igniting humanity in the business leadership. In the service of that, we run some programs. We work with organizations. We run leadership journeys or leadership interventions. We also run initiatives which are in the service of expanding the conversation and changing the narrative of leadership. We all in Leadership at Humanity truly believe that genuinely or authentically humans are wired to be compassionate, to be caring about each other. But I feel in the business world, this needs to be amplified. And that's what we have been trying to do through our programs initiatives. LEH Dialogues is one of those initiatives, the one which you're going to be part of today. And I'm so thankful that you made a choice to join us, where we invite leaders like Linda who have a compelling story to inspire and influence people around them. And then we run LEH mentoring program, which is our way of really extending guidance support to those people who don't have access to guidance, but have aspirations or dreams to grow in their lives. So those of you who feel that they can be mentors with LEH, or those of you who feel you know people who can benefit from this program, please share more details about LEH mentoring with them. You can sign up free on our website. And then a little bit about the LEH dialogues. We started these dialogues about 2 years back, where we invited our first guest to bring out the human side of very successful people in their own rights. And our idea, our goal, aim was to listen to their stories and get inspired and build our own dreams and challenge our own boundaries. Since then, we have done many such dialogues, and we have brought in on this platform people from very diverse backgrounds who have been extremely successful humans in their own right, but they have demonstrated a deep humanity to be who they are today. And I feel that only humans can inspire other humans. So you listen to these stories, you interact with them, you learn from them, and then you start to dream like them and see what you can do with your own lives. We will continue to have these conversations and these dialogues in the times to come. So feel free to visit our website or look out for our social media campaigns to join for those conversations. The flow of the session today is going to be like this. So I'll, in a moment, introduce very briefly about what I know of Linda. And then I'm going to invite Linda, who's our guest today. And as I said, I'm so thankful. It's Thanksgiving. She's celebrating with her family. She's based here in Chicago area, but she's made a choice to be with us and inspire all of us in this conversation. And then after Linda gives her introduction and shares her story, what makes her who she is, I'm going to have some questions for Linda. We'll get into a conversation or a dialogue. But essentially, it's a session where we really encourage and want our participants to ask questions and get inspired. So throughout the dialogue, throughout the conversation, feel free to use the dialogue box to bring up your questions, which we will then discuss with Linda. And then feel free to raise your hand and just be on the screen and ask your question. Remember, we call it a dialogue. So it's not a story which we want to tell you. It's a story we want to co-create with you. So we want you to be part of this conversation. So feel free to ask when you feel there is something you would like to know more about. So with that, I'm going to transition to sharing a little bit about Linda, what I know of her, and what makes me so excited about this conversation or this dialogue today. So Linda and I met about 2 years back at the peak of COVID here in Chicago area. And I'm so thankful that Linda reached out to me. I was still kind of early stages of envisioning and talking and thinking about leadership at humanity. And we just had a connect. And my first conversation with Linda left me inspired to really get to know more about her and what makes her who she is. And then we had some frequent conversations, including in-person catch-ups. And every time I met Linda, I found a very grounded, very authentic human who had challenged her own boundaries, who had aspirations to grow and make a difference. And then I've been following Linda's growth in top organizations, taking top positions. I read her book, which is very, very compelling, but someone who stays grounded and never leaves what makes her who she is. In my own journey, in my own experiences, I've come across many such leaders. And there is one thing common in behind their success, which is their ability to stay grounded and believing in who they are, and their ability to challenge their own boundaries and create an impact which is much bigger than what it makes something for themselves. It's an impact on everybody who is influenced or inspired by them. So it's my delight today to have Linda as my guest. Can't wait to hear her story. I think every time I interact with Linda, I find something new about her, which is the beauty of this connection or relationship we have. So I'm looking forward to this dialogue. And with that, I present to you our guest today, Linda Kai. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Atu. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I feel incredibly honored to be here with you all today. It has been my passion for the past 15 years to nurture globally minded humane leaders so that our teams can have a strong sense of purpose, can feel safe, and feel connected. It resonates deeply with me, your hunger for self-improvement, to be better leaders yourself, and also to be better human. And big disclaimer, I think Atu already said, this is Thanksgiving. As I speak, I'm hiding in the closet in my in-laws' house, and you might hear some dog barking and kids running in the background. But this is the best space I can find, so I apologize for that. And also, before I dive into the topic, I want to say a huge thank you to Atu and the whole LEH team for giving me this opportunity to be here and sharing my story with you. Atu is one of the amazing leaders that never cease to inspire me. He really embodies the ethos of LEH. To me, that means compassion, humility, curiosity, and above all, love. I also want to acknowledge all of you enthusiastic participants. The presence, the fact that you are here is a testament of your own dedication to leadership and your vision. You are here because you also dare to dream a better future with more inspiring leaders, and you have the determination to make that happen. So I do want to say, hey, stop for a second and pat yourselves on your shoulder. We're in this journey together. Okay, so let me find my slides. Here we go. Is that clear for everybody? Thumbs up? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the involvement already. So let me begin with my story. In the 70s, in the city of Shanghai, in China, I was born to a very average Chinese family. My dad was a chef and my mom was an accountant. Neither of them speak a word of English, and they didn't have college degrees either. In fact, in the years after I was born, China was recovering from a failed socioeconomic experiment that left the country very poor. The picture you saw below was a view of Shanghai's Huangpu River. The east bank was largely farmland. And then there's a view you are probably more familiar with. The same area is now the regional financial center crowded by skyscrapers. 30 years of economic development fueled by globalization completely transformed Shanghai, and the rest of China follows the same story. I show you this because as much as I emphasize individual agency and empowerment, I think it's important to also mention the backdrop that I feel my generation is the biggest beneficiary for globalization and China's economic reform in that era. And you see my lovely family with me at 6th grade, and my dad and my mom. My dad is my biggest influencer growing up. In my memory, he loved words and books, always up in the attic, writing and reading. He had to drop out of school at the age of 16 to help his family raise siblings. He's the eldest of 5. So he loved the school, but he had to give up, studying. But he never gave up his dream. Later, he built the first cooking academy in China. He published over 30 recipe books and was awarded the honorary chairman of Chinese Culinary Association. He taught me the lesson of passion, vision, and perseverance. But it really took the writing of my own book to fully grasp that lesson. So fast forward, what do you see here? The first picture on the left is when in January 2020, at the book launch event of Share in London, I co-authored a book with Chris Yates, then the chief talent officer of Ford, and it was published by Bloomsbury. I worked with Chris a long time ago at HSBC, the first job I had after MBA. He and I both relocated to Midwest around 2013, similar time. And we started sharing a lot of similar observations about disconnected community, declining trust towards large organizations, and how empathetic leadership can fix all of that. So one day Chris said, hey, we should write a book. And I remember the first thing that came to my mind was, this is totally nuts. I couldn't write a book in my second language. I barely speak it without any mistakes. But then I thought, what would my dad say? Would he approve my excuses just because I didn't have a literature degree? I didn't go to an English speaking college that I couldn't write a book? And what would I say to myself? Would I allow myself stop at this because of these reasons? The whole project took over 5 years. And there were countless moments when I wanted to quit. You know, those little voices saying, oh, you can't do this. How can you be doing this? They never fully went away. And they're always popping up when I was frustrated, tired, or upset. But gradually, I learned to diagnose what triggered it so I could manage my emotions, try something different, or simply walk away for a little bit. I reminded myself, and this sounds very cheeky, I kept saying to myself, this doesn't have to be the most brilliant masterpiece of the century. It is my story to tell, my learnings to share, and no one can take that away from me. Once I refused to compare myself to others and stay deadly focused on my own dream, those voices became noises. They don't define who I am and what I am capable of. So in the middle picture was this September, after 10 years in the US, I finally became a US citizen. My husband, who is lovely from Midwest America, as I mentioned, I'm in the attic, in the closet of my in-laws' house in the middle of the cornfield. He likes to tease me that I could have gotten that piece of paper 7 years sooner if I had gone down the route of marriage. But it mattered to me that I earned my right to be in this country because of my own hard work and contribution. And my dream of becoming a global citizen really started the time I arrived at LBS, London Business School. I still remember vividly when the international shipping services dropped my belongings in my dormitory. And I had this very clear feeling. I know that I'm on my own, navigating the uncharted waters of the West, with no family or network to support me. I had 7,000 pounds in my pocket that barely covered the next year's living expense, definitely not tuition. So I knew I had to figure that out. And let me be 100% with you. I had no idea what or even how I was going to figure it out. In fact, at any given moment, I might be able to see the next couple of steps, but it is very experimental approach. So all these things that you believe extraordinary leaders should be having the vision, having clear idea about where to go and how to get there, those are just, right? Like it's not real. But I think what differentiates true leaders from followers is that true leaders have the courage to commit and then figure it out. So, I knew what I didn't know, and I took everything in my power to figure it out. I attended a lot of professional clubs. I reached out to alumni. I found new role models I admire and researched what made them successful. I did 3 summer internships to try different industries and roles. And it was through all these activities that I discovered the true possibilities that were not obvious from typical career path. So I ended up accepting a role that merged my interest in organizational culture and ethics and a plan to hone my expertise in leadership and change management over time. And that was a great choice and a big decision I made early on in my career. And now the last picture, it really warms up my heart. I enjoy spending my time with my multicultural family in Chicago. My daughter, she's actually a bit bigger than this picture now. She's now 11. She goes to an international school where all the cultures are celebrated. And she's still same, smiling and loving to learn. And it's the best thing that we learn together and cultivate her curiosity. So to round it up, my reflection of this 25 years journey of seeking to be a better leader, to be a better human, is that always stay true to the most sincere and the most authentic part of yourself in every phase of life. Embrace learning, be resilient, and trust in your unique journey. It's not about where you start. It's about where you are headed and how you get there. So with that, Atul, I know we have a very exciting dialogue that we planned for the audience, so I'll turn it back to you.
Fabulous, Linda. Thank you so much. And as I said, in the beginning, in the introduction, you continue to inspire me with something new every time. So I have so many questions of my own, but I do want to make sure that our audience gets to understand the choices you made and what makes you who you are during this time. So my request to everybody on the call, feel free to ask your questions. You can put your questions in the dialog box. So I'll keep bringing up for Linda. And as I said, raise your hand and then just bring up your questions, because it's a great opportunity to really know the choices behind the choices. What she shared is what came out of those choices, but I'm sure there are a lot of reflections, a lot of learnings, a lot of confusion at times. I've been into similar situations. Linda, you talked about moving to London without having a line of sight in terms of how you're going to sustain and survive for next 1 year. Forget about the tuition, forget about how the life will look like after that, but you dare to dream. I'm sure there's a lot which was going on in your mind. And then you have to, you talked about voices which you hear. There are probably 10 voices which are telling you, don't do this. There's a risk involved. And what will happen if this doesn't work out? But then there is one voice which is telling you, lean in. Maybe this is your chance to make something happen. And I always believe that's the choices human beings make, to listen to that one voice against probably 10 of those which are telling you not to do what you want to do. So maybe I want to start with that, Linda. What makes you really go after that voice which is telling you this is your chance, you got to make it, versus 10 of those around you who are probably your well-wishers, people who are telling you maybe not worth it. There's a lot of risk involved. So how do you make those decisions or choices? You've done that all your life. Your story of your family in China and how you left China, came to Singapore, from Singapore to UK. How did you do that? How did you really go through that process of making a choice around a voice which is a positive voice among a lot of noise, as you called it, which could be pulling you back?
Yeah, thank you, Atul. It's a great question. I love a quote that I want to share with you first. It's Mark Twain. And he said there are two most important dates in anyone's life. One is the time you were born, and the other is the time you find out why. And I think a lot of us in similar situation are always seeking what's the true purpose for our existence? How can we make the world a better place and bring positive impact to those around us? And it's not so clear, right? Like it's not one day I wake up and I suddenly like, aha, that's it. And it is a lot through trial and error and through failure. So my reflection is that, number one, it took me a while to make sure that the dream is my own dream. And I don't know, if it resonates with any of you from possibly, like Asian background. My family was very financially conservative and risk averse. It was very difficult for me to, especially at the early part of my life, to chart a very uncertain path with all the pressure to conform. So like I shared, the decision to go to LBS was a very personal decision and with a lot of courage and a lot of risk. And I made it on my own. And I think that's the number one, is to figure out what do you really want to do versus what others are telling you. And the second, I would say, is it is definitely a messy process. So initially, I was in Singapore doing consulting. I was doing very well with McKinsey. I actually went back to China because I realized that my energy was really around organizational culture, talent. So I joined Hay Group, now part of Conferry in Shanghai, and I learned a great deal. But then gradually, I also realized I have a strong desire to really perform on global stage to prove that I have the ability to lead and also build global teams. And that's not what staying in China is going to provide me. And I still remember when I told my managing director that I wanted to pursue my MBA, and see what I can do on an even bigger stage. He said to me, Linda, you are making a big mistake. For anyone who's young, ambitious, and capable, he or she should stay in China or India for the next 15 years. Now, he could still be very right. But again, everyone's dream is different. So that's why I went. And the last thing I would say is I didn't start out to be this author, advisor. I had my own share of failure and mistakes. So for example, in 2017, I accepted a job, a dream job, in my perspective at that time, in London, that brought my family back to the UK. It was great on the paper, reporting to CHRO and responsive to the board. So my husband and I both quit the job. We sold the house, we moved kids to school, and we moved to London. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a mismatch between my skills, interest, and what the job actually required. So I felt isolated. I felt miserable at work. And finally, I didn't feel I could lie to my family anymore. So when I told my husband, he said, let's go home. And I still feel grateful, especially on the day of Thanksgiving, that this is the time that really tested your relationship, and he didn't, blame me or anything, and it was very understanding and very supportive. But it was a hard moment when we moved back. We rented an apartment. Jaja was in very expensive private school because there was no time to enroll her into the public school system. And I remember asking myself, what did I do to my family? There was this immense guilt that I had towards people I love the most. But there was also silver lining, is all these hardship forced me to consider questions that I normally didn't ask myself. For example, who am I? What motivates me? How do I want to spend the rest of my time and energy? What kind of role I wanted as next, instead of defined by the traditional societal criteria of success, level, title, money. What do I really want? And it is through those hard moments I had a sense of clarity. My core value is self-improvement. I fundamentally believe people can improve, adapt, and reinvent to become better forms of themselves if they had adequate access to resources and support. I believe that humans are not disposable, and this is very relevant in the age of AI. And as a community, we have obligations to bring everyone along to benefit from technology and a productivity gain. So I realized I am motivated by helping others be the best they can. And that's why I consciously chose to come into L&D and human resources. And once I clarified that that's my story and that's my value, and that I let that guide every conversation I have with mentors, contacts, or even recruiters, people started suggesting to me alternative ways they see I bring my experience and skills to the table. And that's made, the career switch kind of smooth and possible. So I run it up to say, number one, making sure the dream is your own, not defined by anyone, family, society, peers. Number two, accept it's a messy process. There will be a lot of trial and error, but the most important is how you respond to those mistakes and errors. And lastly, okay, there's another random quote, but it's brilliant and I have to share, is the difference between fate and a destiny. So think about, I don't know how old you are, but like if you are similar to me, and you are somewhere between 45 to 55, or your previous upbringing, background, education, or even professional journey kind of brought you into this position quite naturally, that's your fate. How you respond to changes in life is going to be your destiny. And we have a lot of agency and a choice around that. Does
Amazing.
that help?
Amazing. Very well said. And it, by the way, leads to many other questions. But I see my friend Dave has raised his hand. Dave is, by the way, another inspirational story for another day, and someone who has a huge impact on everybody around him. And he's got a question for you. Dave, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much. It's very inspiring story which you shared with us. Truly very touching. Just one question, and as a personal experience for me also, at times we experience, in meetings that, command over the language overtakes the substance one might have, and experience this kind of situation. How you handle if one doesn't have that command over the language, and you also see in the room that you may be judged by your language, and that's also something I see many people around, they don't, best doesn't come out. So if that kind of situation you might have also experienced the early on in your career, how to handle that?
I appreciate the question. That's pretty much how I felt every day when I started my first job after MBA. I think in addition to language, probably it's also the subtle cues, right? Like working in a different culture, how you see people, understand when to speak up versus when to hold back, when to be part of the discussion, when to, go along. So that requires a lot of learning. My reflection on that, and in the early days, I advise students, for example, international students, on tactics, things like what I tried. I always wrote a very nice meeting summary and I share with people, and adding thoughts that I didn't find the appropriate moments in the meeting to share, and just share with the summary. Or I would find more comfortable one-on-one opportunities to share how I see the work, how I can contribute, just like not relying on those group settings to voice my desire to participate and my perspectives. I would say now I want to add a little bit thing, like every one of us at some point had this imposter kind of feeling, right? Feeling that either you didn't belong or you are not performing to the ideal, either defined by yourself or defined by the people around you. I think the most important is using that as a source of energy and a motivation rather than self-denial and just kind of out. I think that's very important, because that sense of what made you unique as part of this team, you have to hold that. You have to hold that and nurture that, and not let the frustration in the moment kind of define your abilities. And only you can do that. I think that's probably even deeper than the tactics.
Thank you.
But
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What a question, and Linda, your response is spot on. I, by the way, remember myself missing out in my MBA classes, just skipping the classes so that I should not be called out by a teacher to say something which I felt inadequate, whether I'll be able to, to Dave's point, in the language which most of the kids spoke in the classroom, I'll be able to present comfortably and confidently like others did. And it's a huge pressure which you carry with you. And you very nicely explained how do you nurture that mindset of believing in what you do and being out there, and only you can do it. So I have a related question, Linda, for you that, and I'm by the way going completely off script. So bear with me because this is not the questions which I discussed with you. So I'm going
Always
I'm going to
surprised.
so I'm just kind of getting excited with the kind of conversation, the way it is shaping up. I think what you said is so relevant, but not understood that well. One of my own beliefs is that your skills and your capabilities, which are so much more needed, for what you do in life, can be acquired. You go to a new space, you can learn that. But your mindset and your attitude, you got to nurture, you got to remind yourself who you are from time to time. Otherwise, there is a real risk of, building a lot of skill, but losing yourself in the process. So you talked about, for example, commit and then figure out. It's a mindset. It's not a skill. You can't train yourself. You got to really build and nurture that mindset. So what do you do to remind yourself who you are and stay grounded to what you believe in, which eventually becomes your strength to become who you are?
Um, I would still go back to my family, my dad, who really influenced me. He never let the fact that he didn't finish school or he didn't learn writing properly stop him. And the man really put hard work to build the things that he was able to do. So I think number one is we all have self-doubts. But the question is, what if you stop at those doubts, then what will happen? And what if you tried, what will happen? And the second is, and it's interesting, I was recently reflected on this, on how important love and support, or as leaders, the environment we can cultivate full of love and support can change the risk appetite of the person. Like I mentioned, my family was really poor. The whole China was poor. But I always felt very supported by my parents. They had this belief that I could accomplish what I set my mind to do. And they were very clear and vocal about that. And even when I mentioned the kind of lessons I learned when I chose wrong jobs, had impact on my family, and the love and support my husband showed me was the foundation that I could fully explore, what I could become. And then now I look at my daughter and my team. I'm trying to do the same. I think as human beings, our ability to love not only people who are related to you, but really strangers and people who are different from you, is going to be the ability to really help us innovate, take risks to learn, help us to explore the boundaries of our identity, potential. And as leaders, we have responsibilities to share love with others.
Amazing, Linda. Absolutely. And these are things or moments which we typically in our quest to look for those big wins in life we miss out on, which are the anchors or which help you to sustain through those tough or difficult times. Love and what people who care for you, who stand by you, mean to you. So it's a very, very well captured. So,
Yeah, and I know that we also talked about this a lot, like, right? Like the journey of leadership is not smooth sailing. And you were very inspiring sharing with me, especially at some point when I was clarifying my thoughts. And we had some great discussions around being grounded. I'm now working on some practices that we talked about. For example, meditation, stopping a few times in the day to take almost a distant approach, looking at myself, what thoughts appear on my mind? Are there any patterns? Do I feel grounded or I feel supported? So I started to keep a journal about that. I know you had some great suggestions. Would you like to share as well?
Well, first, thank you for bringing that up, Linda, and putting me on the spot. But I think, as you said, I mean, your anchoring or your joy or happiness in life comes from small moments in life, not the big moments. I've been a big believer of that. You know, it's not our promotions or our first stock grants we got from our companies or the big so-called wins, as the world defines those, which create joy and happiness and make us who we are. These are the small moments when people who stand up for you and by you, people who care for you, walk up to you, and my son comes and hugs me, is a big moment for me. And that stays with me long enough than any of those big kind of events which we feel define us who we are. So I think staying grounded to who you are. By the way, keep thinking of what matters most in your life. And in the end, are you able to pursue those opportunities, those directions with all you have? I loved what you said about committing and then figuring out. We don't have all the answers in our life, and we will never have those answers. If we want to grow, we may have an answer if we keep the circle very tight. And then we keep doing that repetitively for, I don't know, 60 years of our life. That's safe. And that has a good kind of opportunity to sustain us through. But then you can do so much more with your life when you stretch your boundaries, you challenge yourselves, but stay grounded to who you are, because that gives you the stability or sustainability of your impact. So I think you called out a lot of that, but reminding yourself who you are, reminding yourself what gives you the biggest joy in life, and reminding yourself that every phase in a life is a passing phase. Sometimes we cling on to the negative events so deeply that we forget that this is just a phase and this is going to be over. So one tip I give to myself or I try is, would I really bother about this event 1 year down the line? And if I won't, would I really fret about it today or for next 1 week and lose those 7 days in my life, which could be filled with joy or happiness, but I'll be sulking and sitting in a corner, and it really doesn't matter in the bigger scheme of things. So I think those are kind of simple reminders which can pull you out of those phases, which sometimes try to pull you down. We are humans in the end, these events and these conversations, sometimes somebody says something to you, it can kill and mess up your whole day. But reality is they don't really bother in the larger scheme of things. There are other things which drive you and influence you and inspire you to be who you are. So keeping those reminders close to you is one way I do. I mean, everybody I'm sure has different ways. And I know you are very close to who you are, and that keeps you going. Now, I am not going to take another question from you, and I'm going to put one back to you, Linda. So so my question back to you is, you made it sound very straightforward and simple, but your life is full of challenges, difficulties, and then you made a choice to overcome those, then avoid or bypass those. Tell us one of your most difficult challenges or choices you had to make, and how how did you make those choices?
I think, the 2017 kind of career switch into L&D, HR is definitely one defining moment for me, for many reasons, right? I already said. But I would say probably the other I would say is the time when I graduated from high school. And it is because I was still relatively young and I was still trying to figure out who I was, and what I wanted in life. And then, as I mentioned, I grew up still in China in a kind of environment where everybody just pretty much followed the same path. So I had the opportunity to take a full scholarship with Tsinghua University to study politics. And it was a really good opportunity, pretty much guaranteed a lifelong government job upon graduation. But my heart told me that's not something I wanted. And the alternative would be taking all the exams, like 9 subjects of them. And I had to get incredible, almost impossible kind of high scores in order to switch to the subject and the university I wanted. So it was a lot of risk at stake. And even my parents were really kind of unsure about if that was the right thing to do. And I couldn't really describe, there was no role model to say, hey, if you did that, that could be, right? That was before the reform. There was no international jobs. There was no private kind of capitalist market domestically. So I think that was really, really hard for me to almost bet on this. So I had a lot of conversation with my parents, and like I mentioned, they are really, really supportive. And in the end, my mom just said, if you can't figure out, we'll just do it again. Like, if you couldn't figure out what you could do, we'll just go back to this entrance exam point and do it again. And that was almost like unconditional love and support, because she believed in her child and she didn't want to, maybe she just didn't want me to be unhappy. Really, I don't know. But yeah, but I think it was defining, because once I did that at the age of 18, there was almost like nothing I could not take ownership of, right? Like I did that. When I look back and I'm like, well, how much more risk or difficulty this is. And it became easier and easier. So one of the things I truly agree, now I'm in kind of adult learning field, is that especially as we grow more and more experienced, it's more likely we act into a way of thinking versus think into a way of acting. So oftentimes, we stay there, we wanted to get every answers before we take any action. We say, oh, I don't know what's the next step. I can't think through all the risks. I don't have all the plan Bs. So that's why I'm not going to do anything. And you become more and more the kind of timid form of yourself. But if you start taking risk and you own your mistakes and you adapt to the situation, right? Look forward, like you mentioned, Atu, like do not stew on things. Of course, we can all be better. And there are a lot of probably mistakes I didn't tell you about. But the more you act, you start thinking about the expensive kind of way of yourself. and you start doing more and more, and the life opens up more possibilities as you start acting. Does that make sense?
Amazing. I really endorse and reinforce what you said in the end, that once you start with a good heart and give it your best, Linda, life starts to unfold possibilities which probably sometimes you don't even imagine what those would be. So it's very well said. We have time for probably a couple of more questions, and I have a long list, but I want to open up to the audience. Anyone who has a question for Linda, this is your time to ask your question. And maybe as people kind of bring up their questions, maybe a fun question, Linda. What is the talent which the world doesn't know about Linda so far? I mean, there's so many talents people know about you. What is the one which the world still has to discover about you?
I wouldn't say talent, but a fun experience I had was I spent a year at the Second City, which is an very reputable kind of performance, on-stage performance group. And I spent a year learning improvisation. I even performed as part of the ensemble on stage. I was really bad. But the point is, talking about this this Asian woman who didn't feel confident about her command of language, always felt a little bit awkward in the different culture, but trying to lead, trying to become better. Oh, totally. So that was one action I took, just to push myself out of comfort zone, to even I was not ready, be on the stage, just trust my gut, trust my emotions and go with it, right? Like I was so bad, but I learned so much through that experience. And that probably also helped me in many ways, not only the language, but just how I feel about what I could do and taking risks, have fun, like what we are saying, go with it. And learn something new every day, every year. I still try to set a goal every year to learn something new. Fabulous.
Great. So we need to discover more about that talent, Linda, maybe when we catch up next. Any questions, by the way, from the audience? Any last question? Bhaskar is raising hand. Bhaskar, over to you.
Hello, Linda. Inspiring journey of last 25 years leaves one amazed. Two words come to my mind listening to you. One is, it's a lot about breaking boundaries and stepping into uncharted territories. That has been your journey over the last 25 years. Notwithstanding, you are a very capable person and professional. When things don't go right, like for the 2017 case which you cited, do insecurities come in? And if they do, how do you keep them out of your mind and thought?
Of course, you are absolutely right. I think it absolutely does. Some moments more than others. And as a matter of fact, I'm also going through a transition as we speak, kind of figuring out the next stretch of my career. And sometimes I do, feel insecure. I don't want to be irrelevant. I don't want to be forgotten. I wanted to keep making impact and keep making the people I care about better. So one thing I kind of mentioned is I started some practices that really helped me. Number one is just practicing on self-acceptance. So any thoughts that emerge, I try not to deny it or criticize it. I try to take an approach that's a little bit distant, kind of almost like a third person observing your own thoughts. And then I try to understand, I keep a journal. I write down what are the thought loops, what are the things keep emerging, what it is trying to tell me, right? It's not clear immediately, but as you keep the journal, you see patterns. And then the other thing I'm doing is just examining how grounded and how the feeling of support I have at any given moment. And, I broke my foot 3 months ago. Atul knows about it. And it was a very nasty kind of tennis incident. But as a result, I was immobile for pretty much the past 3 months. And I still, at a moment, feel like, oh, I thought I was healed, but it hurt so bad I couldn't do things. And I learned to be patient with my body, with myself. And I also try to find things that still bring me joy. Like I started every day, I do 2 hours yoga and a Pilates, which keep me kind of centered with my core. I feel amazing after I'm able to connect with my body, even if I can't walk or run much. So I find things that really ground me and make me feel supported. And of course, family time, right? Like after I finish this call, I'm going back to my big family, totally comfort food, breakfast, the sausage and gravy, a lot of pancakes. I love those moments. I just feel at the end of the day, we want to feel like, how we are connected with all those we love, maybe your family, maybe your friends, maybe your teams, and really cherish and nurture yourself through those moments. So no magic bullet, but I think the practice takes patience, persistence, and a commitment. And it is the best thing we can all do to ourselves. Either it's through your body, through your mind. So I wish you good luck. And I also just know that I'm also on this journey.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. Amazing.
Well, we have more questions, but I know we are on time. So I want to thank you, Linda, for continuing to inspire me and everybody else. I think this was probably as honest, as transparent, as vulnerable conversation we could have. I think you are helping me start the Thanksgiving weekend on a very, very positive note. Thanks for being available on this day, being away from your family. Wish you a great rest of the Thanksgiving weekend ahead. And to our audience, thanks so much for continuing to join us and inspire us to be in a space where we can create more of these conversations. I want to especially call out my team, Sophia, Irish, Kanchak, Dachen, for setting it up. There's a lot of work which goes behind these conversations, and they do a fabulous job as always. And our next dialogue will be on the 26th of January with Dara Huot. Dara is, again, like Linda, another inspirational leader. We try to make it as diverse as we can and different. Dara is the Chief Executive Officer of Far Performing Social Enterprise in Cambodia. He's one of those children of the outcome of conflict in Cambodia during the genocide impacted. And then they created this organization where they bring together those children whose families were impacted during the genocide of the 70s and give them a reason to make an impact on the society. So someone, again, as I said, as inspirational as Linda, please join up. You can sign up on our website. Thank you very much. Wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving, and the rest of you just have a wonderful evening and a great day. Thank you. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Linda. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.